The peace I choose today. Peace is the gift that I give today. No easy shortcut, peace is the way. I will lay down my pride, lay down self-righteousness, and surrender to the peace I choose today. My all, I give my love for all. My all, I give my love for Peace is the reason we're here today. Knowing accident, we've been called by name, called to lay down our lives, stand up for greater good, and surrender to the peace we choose today. Peace we choose today. Peace we bring today. Peace we live. Oh, today. Peace today. Peace today.
Shanti. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. Om Shanti is a greeting of peace, and we are very happy and fortunate to see all of you here today. And let me extend a very warm welcome to Dato Sri, Dato, and all our distinguished guests this afternoon. Before I proceed, I would like to give a brief introduction about the organization. For those of you who are coming here for the first time, you must be wondering what this is all about. And so let me give you a brief introduction about the organization. The Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University is a worldwide organization dedicated to personal transformation and world renewal. It has an ongoing interest in developing programs that empower the individual. Originally founded in India in 1937, there are over 1 million students worldwide across 110 countries. So, Brahma Kumaris are represented in 110 countries throughout the world. Activities of international interest are coordinated regionally from offices in London, New York, Sydney, Moscow, and Nairobi. Brahma Kumaris Malaysia, which is a member of the BKWSU, was established in 1981 with the aim of serving the public by teaching meditation and to impact moral and ethical knowledge. It is an independent, non-governmental organization which had participated in several international projects, namely 7 billion acts of goodness, the Manifesto for a Culture of Peace and Nonviolence in 2000, and many, many more projects. It is currently celebrating its 40th anniversary and holding a series of public programs, talks, and seminars. And it is also my greatest pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Mr. Charles Hogg. He is the National Coordinator of Brahma Kumaris Australia and a senior teacher of the Brahma Kumaris for more than 45 years. Charlie, as he is popularly known, is also the chairman of Brahma Kumaris Australia Board of Directors and also an active member of the Brahma Kumaris International Coordinating Group responsible for major international projects. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Charlie with us today because literally he's been going all around the country on a very short and flying visit, starting with Johor, stopping in KL, stopping in Ipoh, and in the mainland this morning, and finally in Penang this afternoon. So this very evening, he has to leave for KL for another program tomorrow morning. So he is on a flying visit, and so while he's here, we should take advantage of his vast knowledge as a leader in his field for 45 years. So without further ado, let me call upon Brother Charlie to address us. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's really such a great pleasure to be with you, and I'd like to thank Kala for her lovely introduction. And it's very special for me to be back in Penang, I think after 5 or 6 years, and I always deeply appreciate Helen and Kim, who have been here for I don't know how long, 30 years or so, offering meditation and lots of projects, peace projects for the community. What I thought I'd love to do today is just share a few of my thoughts. It'd be lovely to have a little bit of discussion and interaction, because I think leadership is really, values and leadership, a subject that influences all of our lives. And at the end of the Cold War, the American Army, this was perhaps only in the early 1990s, coined an acronym to describe the atmosphere in our world. It's quite well known, called VUCA. And VUCA stands for V for volatile, U for uncertain, C for complex, thank you. It's been a long day today. And A for ambiguous. And I think it absolutely describes the reality of the world we're living in at the moment. Volatile things can just happen just like that. They can just explode just like that. Uncertain. It's like anything can happen anytime to anyone, anywhere. And this uncertainty of life, as we all know, means that anxiety is absolutely exponential. Anxiety is going through the roof for virtually everybody. Complex. How complex is this world? At the moment, we have a war in the north of Europe, and it's affecting virtually every human being on the planet. The cost of our food, maybe the cost of petrol, etc. Every little thing that happens in one corner of the planet is influencing another corner. And ambiguous. Nothing is clear. There is no easy answer to anything. And so we're all trying to navigate a world, the VUCA world. And my own feeling is to try to be a leader in this atmosphere is not easy. What do you feel? I don't think it's easy. And there are so many crises in the world, and I promise you I won't bore you with just talking about them, because we just have a tsunami of this information. But I believe personally that one of the great crises in our time is the crisis of leadership. No matter where you go in this planet, people have lost faith in political leadership, religious leadership, leadership in business, even I would say in the family as well. There's an absolute leadership crisis. And when really there's leadership that has no real values or self-mastery, then that leadership has no real power or inspiration.
A little bit backwards. I can increase it now.
Yeah.
Because together you have.
That's fine. So that sort of leadership has no real inspiration or power, I would say. And what is the sort of leadership that people want today? I would say people want a leadership that's humble. You know, sometimes people see humility as weakness, but I personally see humility as enormous strength. Actually, humility is an external expression of someone with self-value, self-respect, and self-awareness. And many years ago, I was in New York, and I met a man who was the Undersecretary General of Political Affairs, Dr. James Jonah. And what that meant was that he represented the Secretary General of the United Nations, dealing with a lot of the crises in the world, the leaders of the world. And he had had some contact with the Brahma Kumaris. And I actually asked him, who's the most impressive leader you've ever met? And he said, and he was meeting the President of America, Russia, etc., Dadi Prakashmani, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris at that time. She was the head of this organization for 38 years. And I said, why? And he said, because she's completely humble and she uses her position 100% to serve and not for her own benefit. She's completely a humble server. So I think people really want humility. People want inclusion. And I think today that leaders that try and control, I don't know what your experience is, I just feel it does not work anymore. To me, like a leader is like a facilitator who brings a group of people together to facilitate the best outcome for all concerned. So it's like includes absolutely everybody. A leader needs, I feel, to be very caring. I mean, how do you feel if there's someone you're working with, someone who is perhaps senior to you in an organization who shows you that love and care and respect? It's absolutely touching and it's essential in any human environment. As we know, a leader needs to listen well. And that's a real art, isn't it? To genuinely listen to the heart of another person. what that person is really saying. And I feel that a leader these days is one who doesn't use the position for their own, shall I say, self-respect, but they use it really to serve. And in my understanding that, excuse my throat, in my understanding that, there's two things really, managing and leading. Some people can have an MBA, but they're not great leaders. To me, management is functional. It's about systems and organization. But for me, leadership is all about relationship. It's all relational. It's all relational. And when you ask people what they want from a leader, most will say they want a vision and a direction, firstly. Secondly, love and respect. To me, there can be no human work, human community without love and respect. It's the sort of the mortar that keeps a whole organization going. And thirdly, inclusion and belonging. I've read quite a few studies, whether it's a family, whether it's a business, whether it's an organization, whether it's a community, the way that people really feel a sense of connection is through inclusion and belonging. And in a way, if we look at managing and leading, managing controls, leaders influence. Can you control anyone? Can you control anyone? Personally, I don't think so. But you can influence almost everybody. And a good leader has, through their personality of love, respect, valuing others, can influence outcomes enormously. But often we confuse leadership with control. And my sense in this world is that people are rejecting authoritarian leadership outright. Like the Arab Spring, which was happening over many years, I think that was a complete rejection of authoritarian leadership. And I see in areas of life when people sort of are authoritarian in the way they operate, they get a lot of pushback. So managing often tries to control, but leaders influence. I would say that managing is about doing and leading is about being. And at the heart of leadership, in my understanding, is communication. And when you communicate with people, you communicate on three levels. One is what you say. The second is your face. People read your face. And the third is the feelings or the vibrations. Research tells us that 80 to 90% of the effect of communication is non-verbal. So the real messaging is not so much what you say, it's the feelings you give to people. I think we all know that, right? Sometimes you get two messages from people. One is what you hear. That might be nice, but your feeling is something quite different. What do you trust? I think you always trust your feeling. Is that correct? I think you always trust what you feel. And then some people wonder why I'm not really an effective leader. Because I think, sometimes people feel no one understands what's in my mind. I disagree completely. I think sometimes your mind is like a big billboard on the road that, with neon lights on it. Because actually people read you through your face and your vibrations. So when you are carrying what I would suggest, I'm sorry about my throat. Thank you. So if in the back of my mind I'm carrying negative thoughts, critical thoughts, I'm disapproving of you, I might not say it, you feel it. And therefore that relational aspect of leadership is not really effective. It's why really I think the leader of today that's successful will really begin to look internally and understand that me as a person is the most powerful message in leadership. It's not so much what I say, it's who I am. I always say to parents, these days, so many parents come to our centres and they say, really, I'd love my children to learn this. How can they take something of it? And I say, you do it yourself and they will learn from you. You're an example, and your example is the most powerful form of inspiration to them. But probably I think the great crisis in leadership today is trust. You know, there's almost an inherent mistrust in so many leaders. And I was in the UK a few years ago, and there was a man there who was studying trust in leadership. And he spoke about the 4 principles of building trust. If I'm a leader, building trust perhaps in myself. The first is keep your promises. Keep your promises. If I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, or halfway I do a U-turn, or I keep putting it off, actually people's trust in you will start to go down. And you know, for me, I've experienced this myself. I'm absolutely so careful that if I say I'll do something and I can't do it when I've said I'll do it, I will always communicate to that person, say, listen, I can't do it now, but I can do it by this time. Because I think it begins to erode. You say something, but actually you do something different. The second one really is to walk your talk. In other words, be the example. And you know, when you talk about leadership these days, so many of the people that are quoted are people like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and these sorts of people. Because, you know, Mahatma Gandhi, absolutely the foundation of his leadership was his own practice. He was absolutely adamant about being an example. And there was a story about Mahatma Gandhi that a mother from a village brought her son to meet Mahatma Gandhi because she wanted him to change his diet. Something very simple. The grandmother wanted her grandson to change his diet. He was eating food she didn't approve of. He wouldn't listen to her, but she thought that he would listen to Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi said to this very old lady, come back in a week with your grandson. So she walked back 20 kilometers to her village and then came back again a week later. And the Mahatma said to the little boy that you shouldn't be eating this food, it's not good for you. And the grandmother got a little bit upset and said, if you told him last week, I wouldn't have had to walk 40 kilometers, 20 kilometers back to my village and 20 kilometers again. And the Mahatma said, I had to do it first. And really, I think trust is built on example. Albert Schweitzer said, example is not the best form of leadership. Example is the only form of leadership. So to build trust, I need to keep my promises. I need to walk my talk. The third one is to be benevolent. And I don't think we can underestimate a benevolent attitude. And you know, my experience of, I suppose, spirituality, meditation, is that there's 3 steps: awareness, attitude, atmosphere. You create an awareness with your thinking in your mind. Your attitude propels it and creates a feeling. And people all tune into that feeling. And when your awareness is benevolent, you can't imagine the effect of that on those around. And I can say for me, when I'm working with people, I consciously learn their good points. Because my measure of ego, if I can say how much ego I have, is how critical I am of other people. If I'm chronically mentally critical of people, people won't feel safe with me. People won't trust me in that way. But if you, in your attitude, know people's value, the most powerful leaders hold the value of others in their attitude. People feel loved and respected, and they will automatically, I feel, cooperate. The fourth one, be predictable. Be predictable. If my nature is very volatile, one day I'm so friendly, I'm open, and the next day I'm abrupt, I'm rude, I'm upset, I'm short-tempered, people never know, how to manage, what to do, how to really relate to me. And so those four things that build trust: keep my promises, walk my talk, be benevolent, and be predictable. When I really follow that, and these are values in my life, when I demonstrate these, actually people begin to trust. I would say we're living in a climate where people begin with mistrust mostly. I don't know whether you agree. And only when they observe me over a long period of time will they begin to trust me. And I think as a leader, we need three wisdoms. The first is my intellectual ability, my IQ, and I would say today most of us are incredibly well educated. And this helps me be a leader, more like a manager for the world outside, I would say. This helps me pass exams, make money, manage an organization. It's important, but if I feel anxious, if I feel depressed, if I feel afraid, does this intelligence help me? Or if I feel inadequate, lacking confidence, I don't believe so personally. So I have my IQ, my EQ, we read so much about it, my emotional intelligence. In a way, it's just the ability to build rich, loving relationships with others. This is at the heart of a good leader. To build rich, loving, sustainable relationships with those I'm working with. To me, that's at the heart of a successful leader. But the third one is spiritual intelligence. And I would say that if emotional intelligence is the intelligence to build a rich, loving relationship with others, spiritual intelligence is the wisdom to build a rich, loving relationship with me. The first relationship in life is with me. First, I have to lead me. And there's so much thinking around today that the best leader out there is the one who leads the self first. The foundation of leadership is inner leadership. Do I manage my inner world? Do I manage my thinking? Do I manage my emotions? Do I manage my reactions? Or am I very intellectually well educated, but when it comes to all my emotions and feelings, I'm all over the place? And I would say that this spiritual intelligence is really the main thing of a leader these days, of building values in leadership. And the first part of that is really to know who I am. How can I really lead others if I don't really know who I am? And I think that there's three personalities inside all of us. And I would say two of them are ineffective in leadership, and one of them really makes me effective. And the first personality I call the I of arrogance, or the I of superiority. And this personality takes its whole sense of self from my labels of my body. Who am I? I'm a gender, a nationality, a culture, a religion, a a profession, a status. Hundreds of labels describe my body, but they are all temporary. All of them are temporary. And when this eye of arrogance or the eye of superiority, is ruling my inner world, I compare with others and I think, I am better, I know more, I am right. And when it comes into my feelings, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. Anyone sensitive here? Yeah, thank you. I think we're all a bit sensitive, right? I think it's a part of human nature today. I was about to say, wow, I'm so impressed. You can name no one's sensitive. Penang's unique in the world. We're so sensitive. And I would say that when my ego rules my inner system, whenever I'm feeling insulted, hurt, disrespected, know I'm being deceived. Because when my ego is dominating my inner kingdom, my inner world, that's when I'm very, shall I say, my leadership style is very forceful, dogmatic, dominating, etc. This is the leadership that absolutely everywhere in the world people are rejecting outright, that sort of leadership. The second personality also takes its whole sense of self from the labels of my body, these temporary labels. I call it the eye of lack of self-respect or the eye of inferiority. I would say this is like inverted ego. And this eye is the most powerful force in the world today. When this eye is ruling my inner world, I compare with others and I think others are better. Others know more. Others don't love me. Others don't value me. Others don't respect me. And when it comes into my feelings, I feel hopeless, inadequate, unworthy, and I would say depressed. And in psychology, depression is like a dream. My dream in life to be loved and valued hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. I'm living my life, but who am I really? Am I just this temporary set of labels? Is that really who I am? And when this I is a leader, usually I want a role to feel good about myself. Actually, my aim of leadership is not so much to serve, but because I lack self-respect, I want a position, I want a title, because then I feel better about the person I am. Because I can't give myself respect internally, I often become addicted to it externally. And if I don't get it, I can get extremely hurt, upset, and so on. And so often what happens is when my inner world is being ruled by my ego of superiority or my ego of inferiority, I fluctuate. You're up one day, you're down one day. You fluctuate enormously. The third eye is the original eye. And 80% of people believe that there's something more than a physical body. And we call it the soul or the spirit or the Atma. The Atma means like three things really. I, the living, the dweller in the costume. And the soul is the one that, in a sense, the soul is the leader inside. I am the soul, this is my body. I'm acting. But the soul has lost its sovereignty. The soul has bowed down to thinking it's just a temporary body. And the two children that have been born out of that are my ego and my lack of self-respect. And when I start to begin to know and experience who I am as a soul, then automatically It's like coming home to a place inside where I feel so comfortable. I take all the pressure off myself to impress people, to look good, to be noticed, and I begin to really accept myself. And the most precious thing of all is that I access inner peace. Meditation, I think, is a wonderful tool of a leader. And the aim of meditation actually is not to be peaceful. That's the result. The aim of meditation is to know and experience who I am. The automatic byproduct is a feeling of internal peace. And when I'm an instrument, if I can use that language, an instrument leader for a group of people, and I live in a state of self-value, I have my self-respect, I have a sense of inner peace, that's like a natural authority. People will want to follow someone who has self-control. Mahatma Gandhi always used to say that when you rule your inner system, then you're qualified to rule others or be responsible for others. And in a way, what I've seen of a lot of these great leaders, when you go to the United Nations in New York, when you enter the United Nations, just to the right is a little meditation room. And post-World War II, in the chaotic world it was, the United Nations Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld, he created that little meditation room. And when he had a huge decision to make, he would go and sit and meditate for hours. Why? Because he said, this is for the benefit of all humanity. I have to completely detach from my own desires for the benefit of all. So he meditated. I was in South Africa when Nelson Mandela became the president of that country. It was amazing. It was like the whole country had a party. It was just the most amazing experience. And yet, someone I met there when I was there, she was in his cabinet. And she said that, if you know his story, before he went to jail, he was incarcerated for 27 years. He would say he was working as a terrorist in a sense. He would go out at night and sort of blow up railways and things like that. He was this sort of person. In jail, he began his inner journey. He read all the scriptures of all the great religions, and he began to meditate. And she said that in a cabinet meeting, whenever they had a big decision, he would close his eyes and just go into a still place once again. I think that in the world in which we're living, that the most effective leadership is to be a person who really demonstrates values in my behavior and even on my face as well. Because it is revealed. My inner world is revealed through my face and through my vibrations. And this is really, I think, the sort of leadership that really works today. My own feeling is, and I'm going to wind up in just a couple of minutes, is that it's such a challenging world. Unless I care for my inner world, look after my thoughts, look after my heart, look after my emotions and my feelings, sometimes it's like we feel completely empty. We feel completely empty inside. And to meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. It's like replenishing myself. And what is the principle of meditation? The principle of meditation is that you meditate in the morning and you elevate your awareness. And then when you step into the day, all your words and actions come out of this elevated place of awareness. And then I think people feel something from you. And actually here we learn to meditate with our eyes open. And the reason is that I can actually carry my inner peace into my daily life. And once I was at the University of California in San Francisco, and they were studying meditation. And more recently, I found out that in all areas of science, there's more studies into meditation and the mind than almost any other area of science. I mean, that says a lot, doesn't it? Because the human mind is a bit out of control, we're really studying what it is and how to manage it. And I was a guinea pig in an experiment. And what the scientist was interested in, okay, meditators, it's a proven fact they can lower their brain waves. You know, there's 4 sort of brain waves: beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta is when your mind's really active, when you're busy during the day. Alpha is when you're, alpha 1 is when you feel a bit tired, alpha 2 a bit sleepy, alpha 3 yawning, and then beta is sleep and delta is deep sleep. A meditator can take their mind into the alpha state at will, and that is so good for your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. But what she was interested in, okay, you meditate, you calm down, but when you go back into challenging life situations, dealing with people who are emotional, people who are stressed and anxious, you know, trying to manage life, even in the family, does your meditation, is it effective or does it go out the window? And I had to sit in this little room for 6 hours. I was one of her guinea pigs. And she gave me all these jobs I had to do. So first I meditated and she registered my brain waves. Second, I had to sleep, and it's something I'm pretty good at most of the time. I don't get sleep. They registered my brain waves. And then thirdly, she gave me all these problems to do, and she was registering my brain waves to sort of simulate a work situation. And what she said was that people who meditate with their eyes open carry that feeling into their life, into their working life, and into their family life. Because a lot of people worry that meditation is divorced from the life out there, but actually meditation is for action. When you meditate, you elevate your thoughts, and your thoughts are the seeds of action. So when you come into action, your peaceful thoughts, your loving thoughts color your actions. This is the state of mind of a leader. I become a leader of the self. I create quality thoughts and feelings, and as they flow through my behavior, I become a natural leader in a community. Anyway, I'm going to put a pause button on myself, and I think, as I said at the beginning, I just know everyone here is a leader in some form, and we're all dealing with a fairly challenging world out there. So it'd be really lovely to have some questions or comments or experiences for a few minutes. If anyone would like to share something, please feel free.
Charlie has traveled around 80 countries in the world, and he has been in leadership position for more than 60 years, I believe, 40, 50, 45, 40 years at least, 50 years. So a wealth of experience and a wealth of information. And this is our opportunity. So if you have any questions that you would ask pertaining to the topic of values in leadership, as we all know, it is the most needed topic of the century, I would even say, especially in Malaysia. So, any questions? Feel free to come forward or just stand up. It's a cozy atmosphere. Please.
I'm a very hyperactive woman. And most of the time my brain is in data. Even while I try to sleep, it's very, very active. And I find more comfort when I close my eyes. But the moment is around 2 a.m., it's so active already.
Thank you so much. You know, I think that's extremely common today. And it's a sort of a paradox, isn't it? We're so educated about the world outside, but most of us are so uneducated about the world inside. We're sort of, you know, we overthink about everything and we have no, shall we say, spiritual power to put a full stop to thinking. And so the overactive mind often exhausts us. And you know, my experience is that this journey of self-mastery, self-leadership, which is a self-realization, it's almost like the more I let go identifying with my temporary self and all the labels of my body, and I identify with my permanent self, who I really am, the soul that's lived before this body and after, the more, if I can use the language, I become detached from my body, almost automatically the mind begins to cool down. And if I can use the example of a tree has a seed, trunk, branches, and leaves. The leaves are your thoughts at the top. A big tree, like these wonderful trees around here, has probably hundreds of thousands of leaves. They're our thoughts. And we all know, you know, some of them you don't like, so you cherry pick them out because you don't like them, but 10 more grow. But what is feeding the leaves are your mental and emotional patterns. And we have all these mental and emotional patterns, you know, perfectionism and all sorts of things. The trunk is my subconscious, but the seed is my sense of identity. When I sow a false seed, that the seed of my inner tree is false, that I'm a temporary body, that it will grow, it affects my subconscious, it affects all my mental, emotional patterns, and on the top, chaos. But we try to stop the chaos at the thought level, but the problem is the seed. And when you replace the seed with the sense that I am an eternal, immortal, non-physical soul, I, the soul, have no gender, no nationality, no color, all the things that divide. The reality is I'm a soul. My own experience, I meditate every day, and I have done so for most of my life. As you begin to become soul conscious, automatically the byproduct of reconnecting with my fundamental self as you calm down. And even in the most challenging and stressful circumstances, your sense of inner calm remains. Now, it's easy to say, because we all have the habit of this body consciousness and this overactive mind. You know, 30 years ago, were there sleep clinics in hospitals, or 50 years? I don't think so. Nowadays, half the population can't sleep. Nowadays, the main drug sold in America is sleeping tablets, out of all drugs. And America's not the only place like that. We're just so out of control. We've lost our inner leadership. We've completely lost that inner authority. And spirituality, I feel, is a very gentle way of regaining that inner leadership. And really, it's my own experience that the more you begin to know and experience, meditation is meditating on the idea, who am I? I am a soul. And converting that into a feeling. You know, sometimes I think education at a university out there, you learn so much information. All of us here, we know so much about so many subjects. Spiritual education is taking one idea and going deeper and deeper and deeper. Who am I? As I unpack that, it should be fundamental to human life to know and experience the self. Then everything comes in perspective. You know, Plato said, until you know the self, you can't make sense of the world out there. You can only make sense of what's happening out there when you make sense of who you are. Because who you are gives your lens on life. And when my lens is through my ego all the time, I'm constantly sensitive, hurt, insulted, and I'm convinced it's other people. But that's a complete illusion. It's me. And when I lack my self-respect, I have the ego sort of inferiority, I'm always feeling people are looking down at me and they don't appreciate me. I'm convinced, but actually it's me. It's because my inner world is distorted because I've forgotten who I am. You know, spirituality just says we don't have to be religious. It just says to actually reconnect with who I am fundamentally. And I find when the seed is true, the tree starts to grow healthily once again. And the leaves on the top are calmer, naturally. So you don't have to try to change your thoughts, you have to change the seed, and eventually that will grow a different quality of thought. So, but really, you're very lovely and honest, because I think every one of us could say, you know, it's not an easy world, is it? It's not an easy world. And I think a lot of us hold inside a lot of our feelings because we feel, you know, quite frankly, a lot of people feel, I'm not managing, but others seem okay. Why am I? But actually, I think scratch the surface. And most people are struggling. And no, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a counselor, but I do talk to a lot of people, and I think really managing my inner world is not easy at the moment. Anyway, I've gone on a long time. Is there anyone else who wants to ask something or say something? Yes, thank you.
To discover the seed, is it through meditation or through further process of discovery? It takes a long time. You are still like that.
To discover what?
The seed. The seed.
The seed. It's not difficult. You get the knowledge of the seed. The knowledge of the seed, you know, the soul is an extraordinary thing. Absolutely. You know, as I said, incredibly, 70 to 80% of the world's population believe there's something more than the body. And you know, recently biologists say, scientists say, that this body is made up of 40 trillion cells. Can you believe that? It's like this body is built of these trillions of little building blocks. But that's just really, they're all material. The soul is in a sense more subtle than a cell, because the soul exists, but it's not physical. In mathematics, they define a point. A point exists, but it has no link with the soul. The consciousness is so subtle. And it sits around the pituitary gland. When they now do all the scans of the brain, when the thinking happens, it all comes from here. And it's like when you sit down, when I meditate, I literally let go. I withdraw from identifying with what I do. You know, I might be a partner, I might be a parent, I might be a colleague in a business. That's not who I am, that's what I do. And then I look at my body. I might be Asian, European, Indian. I might be this age, that age. I may be Buddhist, Hindu, Christian. That's not who I am. They're just the labels of my body. That's not who I am. So it's like you keep stepping back, withdrawing, and you feel yourself sitting so lightly in the forehead. And quite honestly, at that point, you get a sense of what death is. That death is just passing from this body. And yet, because we have been so indoctrinated that this is who I am, we become so attached to this temporary set of labels The more I attach my heart to these temporary things, I build fear into my life. I build the fear into my life. But that's how we're all brought up. That's natural today. But as you learn who you are, you start to see the continuity of life. And I often give the example of a train. Because when you sit in a train, you know, the train stops at a station, right? People hop on the train and people hop off. You go to the next station, people hop on, people hop off. That keeps happening, and eventually you hop off the train. The train is life. People come into your life, people go out of your life. Possessions come into your life, possessions go out. Roles, responsibilities, titles, I'm the CEO, and that comes into my life, goes out of my life. But the train of life keeps going. Wisdom is to enjoy life, love life. But when I attach my heart to my role that I am this, or I attach my heart to other people even, I build so much anxiety in my life about losing that which I've become dependent. And when you really think of it, the most inevitable thing, I didn't plan to talk about this, but the most inevitable thing we are all going to pass on, every single one of us. It's the most natural thing in existence. And when we become spiritual, we begin to go to what's really important. And these things, you know, one of my close friends in Australia is a palliative care physician. He's actually an oncologist. And you know, he's always dealing with people who are dying. And you know what he tells me? When people are dying, there's two things on their mind. What sort of person was I? You know, it's like my own evaluation of me as a person and how did I treat other people. That's really, actually, that's what life boils down to. And as he said, I've never heard anyone say, I wish I'd got a better position in life. I wish I'd made more money. I wish I had a bigger house. And yet when we're alive, somehow all of these become important. But what's really important is who am I as a person? Am I living according to my values? And how do I treat other people? Because when I really, you know, at night when you sleep and you're just with yourself, we often evaluate, how do I really feel about myself and my life? I may be successful out there, but am I successful in here? Am I happy? And you know, once in Australia, I gave a meditation course to a man who's a billionaire. Quite an amazing person, actually. And you know what he said to me? His very words, I've been a total success out there and a total failure in here. And I said, why? He said, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. He said, and that's why he began to learn to meditate. He said, I've ignored the spiritual dimension. And unfortunately, what happens in this world is that often we just external, we just build our life in the external world until something dramatic happens, often a health issue, and then suddenly it just prioritizes what's really important. And that's where spirituality says, do my work, you know, really make effort in the world out there, it's fine, but look after your inner world as well. Keep a balance. And that's where I think meditation stabilizes you as a person. So as the world swirls around you, you have a foundation internally and you can manage. Otherwise, the stress of the change in the world, it just becomes too much and we can't sleep, it affects my health, etc., etc., etc. You all know it. We all know it today. Yes. Okay.
Very much. Thank you very much for your questions. Maybe there's a last burning question. Someone very enthusiastically put up their hand. So I have no heart to say no, even though we are running out of time. But one last question. Thank you.
Thank you for the graceful sharing. I want to understand for him how we actually can have the quality of the services as a leader? And at the
Sorry,
same time, can you hear me?
can you, it's a bit unclear for me, I'm sorry.
And I understand more or hear more from you how we actually can smartly play around with the quality of the leader by servicing, while at the same time we can actually juggle on the standard operation.
If you don't mind just repeating that, I'm sorry, I don't think I grabbed it clearly. Yeah.
So, understand the intention of the leader is actually servicing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, how we can have that quality. Okay, at the same time, we can actually juggle or we can play around with the standard operation, which is actually the ego world.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Yeah. You see, a true leader is a server. And there's a language now, a very popular term called servant leadership. And you can only do that when you're full inside. If you do the work inside, you feel full as a person, you feel peaceful, you feel loving, you've got something to give people. But if you don't, you'll be looking outside to others. But when you're full, I think, and when you're self-aware, you can actually manage the variety of personalities around you. And I would say one of the great qualities of a leader today is to be detached. You can only be effective when you're detached. What does that mean? Excuse me, sorry. You can only be effective, when you're detached, because detachment means to be very loving, very caring, very close, but uninfluenced by. To be effective, you have to be uninfluenced. And this is a byproduct of self-awareness. Doesn't mean you're ignoring, you're aloof, no. But you're connected, you're involved, but you're not absorbing, you're observing. Big difference. When I'm empty, I keep absorbing the love, the respect, and then the insults and the criticism. But the more you become aware of yourself, you will automatically become an observer and less influenced. So you become a much more effective leader. It all comes back to knowing and experiencing who I am. So we better have a little bit of meditation because time is going on. And I'm just going to ask if we can just play a little bit of soft music, and I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Please sit quietly. To be an effective leader, I need to become the inner leader. And that begins with knowing and experiencing who I am. Just visualize yourself as a tiny spark of life energy residing in the front of the brain, in the center of the forehead. And let me begin the journey to real inner peace. First, let me let go, identifying with what I do. Just consciously observe your role, your profession, your life as a parent. That is not who I am. That is what I do. And on this inner journey, just for a moment observe the labels of your body, your gender, your culture, your profession, your age. Numerous labels that create a temporary identity. But that is not who I am either. Go deeper and deeper to my eternal, immortal self, the soul. When I'm in a soul-conscious state, peace is natural. Peace is automatic. Peace is my religion. I am a peaceful soul. I am a peaceful soul. The more I know and experience who I am, I become the inner leader of my thoughts, my emotions, my attitudes, and my behavior. This is the first qualification of a true leader. Become a master of the self. With each morning I wake, and before I think about what I have to do or what happened yesterday, let me sit quietly and reconnect with my intrinsic essential self. Just watch your inner world calming down, and then step into the day with a mind and heart full of peace. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Charlie, for that wonderful experience of meditation. So without much further ado, I'd like to call upon Sister Helen, who is the coordinator of this meditation center, and she has been dedicating her life for 30 years towards this cause. So she will say a few words. Sister Helen.
Thank you, Sister Kala. Thank you, Brother Charlie. Thank you, everyone here, for coming on a Saturday hot afternoon. Your presence is very much appreciated. And in conjunction with also our Brahma Kumaris Malaysia 40th anniversary, we also especially would like to honor and thank so many of our leaders in the state government as well as NGOs who I feel have shown so much of service commitment to the people, to society, to humanity. The work you do, and it's some with good intention so much that you do for the community. A lot of times you get defamation, insults as well. Very disheartening, with all the good work you've been doing. But somehow you're strong and you soldier on despite whatever, no matter what, right? So we here, we would really want to show our appreciation for such good work you've been doing. Yeah, and so we are going to present certificate of appreciation, right, to some of our respected leaders, and also for all of you. After that, we do have what we say, blessings and tolling. Blessing cards is just a positive words, because we need to fill ourselves with positive energy. If we are to serve other people, we have to serve ourselves first. So, and then the toli is like sweet cake, etc. It's also learn to be sweet with each other, right? Leave all the bitterness and the sourness in relationship, and first learn to be sweet. So that's our little custom, you might say, to share blessings and sweetness with each other. And thank you for presence, and then we now do the honor presentation.
I would like to invite Mr. Charlie together with Sister Helen to present the certificates of recognition of dedication to the community. So, with pleasure, I would like to call upon YB Chris Lee Chun to receive his gift of recognition of appreciation. Next, I would like to call upon Dato' Lawrence Chia. Dato', please. Mrs. Nick on behalf of Mr. Nick. Mr. Nick Tan Shu Lin. Mr. P. Murugaya. And finally, Madam Baby Gore for Lady. These individuals are being recognized for their dedication and commitment to serving the society. And now we come.
So for the rest, we will give our blessings and
Next, we call upon all of you to come forward one by one and as quick as you can to receive your own gifts and blessings. And you'll be surprised that these positive words are always so accurate for your life. So please come forward as quickly as we can because we have to fly Charlie off to the airport any moment now. So please, yeah, let's start from this side, please.
Okay, thank you very much.
she does laughter terribly.
Madam Sarah, right? Now better now. One more. One more, please. Okay. One, two,
Chicken, your holding a blessing for
See you one day. Yes.
Thank you, Master Charlie. Thank you for your sharing your excellent
Sometimes when people I come back sometimes people say hello to me. I have a break.
Come and take Tony.
Yeah, please.
This is a new Thế đấy. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I know you, brother. You visit me.
I know.
You pick me up in a truck.
I can actually photo this. Yes.